Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Bootcamp Null Solo PvP Tutorial Series. Today we're going to be talking about the theory of taking fights that might not be in your favor, or against ships that might hard counter you. We'll discuss the rock, paper, scissors factors of the game and learning your enemies. Using both of these two topics, we can start to pull off kills that we normally wouldn't be able to. Remember, this series is less about what buttons to push and win, and more of the theories behind the fights and how you use them to your advantage. If you like these bootcamp videos, please make sure to like and subscribe. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. One of the most obvious factors of taking fight is of course the ship types involved. This game is pretty much rock, paper, scissors but on overdrive, even when going 1v1, which, let's be honest, rarely happens. So you end up in this interesting situation where you are always on the other side of the rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, but all you get is a rock. Yet here we are still trying to brutalize people with your rock. Luckily, with some practice, knowledge, and clever plays, you and your rock will be able to make some good plays to snag a kill or wipe their entire gang even. Let's look at the Stabber, a ship that I always suggest to new null PvPers, and determine what it should be cautious of, and then what it's good at killing. This is the fit I showed in the ship selection bootcamp. As a recap, this fit is a very fast T1 cruiser with high mid-range DPS, low tank, and low capacitor. So basically this fit is very little defense other than its speed and DPS. So if you get webbed or scrammed, you're most likely dead because you're not going to be able to track anything that's under your guns. The same can be said with getting neuted as well, because it'll have the same effect of getting tackled. Micro warp drive off, you're slow, you're probably dead. Anything with long webs or heavy neuts are basically a big death bubble around them. Examples would be the Minotaur, Amar, and Galente recons, any T1 battleship with a utility high, but especially the Armageddon just due to heavy neuts, and especially Hicks. Also, anything that can apply damage to you with relative ease would be bad to stay near. Anything with rapid lights or rapid heavies, Lokis, drone boats, long-range ships in general. You don't get a micro warp drive sig reduction bonus on the Stabber, so unless you have really high transversal on a turret ship, if they have the range to hit you, they'll probably do it with ease. On to what the ship is good at. Due to its decent DPS from the 3 damage mods and the rate of fire bonus, which it can also apply well at range due to its fall-off bonus, it should be good at killing lightly tanked ships that either have low DPS or problems applying their DPS to ships around 20 kilometers. So for example, some of my favorite things to see when in the ship is tackle frigates and destroyers. For tackle frigates, you need to pull range and have them chase you. If they get on top of you quickly, you get tackled and you'll have a hard time tracking them. The light missiles and your light drones can help in this situation, but it's much easier to deal with them before they even get on top of you. They're going to have a pretty low transversal to be able to catch up to you because of your speed, so you'll be able to apply damage pretty decently. With destroyers, it's a bit different. You're faster than most destroyers and they're generally lightly tanked. As long as you don't over-ram them and get under your own guns, you can be pretty aggressive and annihilate them quickly. Command destroyers and tactical destroyers are of course more tanky but are still high damage, easy to hit targets so should be taken out or outranged. The Jackdaw will be the biggest problem to its high range and decent DPS in sharpshooter mode. You'll still be able to take a Jackdaw out pretty easily if you're in damage range, but if you're not, just be a little more cautious with it. Now both of these situations seem like they assume a 1v1, which is definitely not how it's going to be. Tackle frigates won't ram you, they don't have backup. The idea is that you would separate them from your friends. We'll discuss that more later in the video. Now, before we go on to how to actually win these fights against ships who might counter you, we need to do a talk about a catch-22 in these situations. It's very important to know who you're fighting when fighting outnumbered and against counters. However, the problem arises is that you actually need to know your enemy. And to know your enemy, you kind of have to fight him a couple times. Do you see the problem? So like I said in my first boot camp, it's all about the experience, learning, and staying motivated. Why do you care who your enemy is? Well, every gang has their own personality and fighting style. Some are super aggressive and bring everything and the kitchen sink to kill you. Some will hot drop you, some are newer groups or might zerg, some want to bring a good fight, while some are just inexperienced fighters. There's a whole multitude of personalities and fighting styles you'll find when roaming Null. It's one of my favorite things about it actually. A lot of the groups who don't generally undock might start to fight if you catch one of the ratting or mining ships out, and then they come try to save it, or if you start stealing money in their ESS. These groups are generally the ones that are kind of easier to take advantage of due to their lack of PvP experience, but might help that crutch by bringing a small doctrine fleet such as Caracals or Feroxes. By going out and practicing in these cheap ships like Stabbers, you can start to piece together the personalities of different groups and learn how to use it in their advantage, or to avoid the fight altogether. I saw this quote in the Less Than 10 Discord, links in the description below. It's absolutely correct, and is what made me want to make this video in the first place. Ozera says, "Context matters. To this end, the first step is to understand the group you are fighting. This will provide you valuable insight on, are they likely to have a significant reinforcements coming in short time, or their flying behavior." Now we can start talking about how to get past the rock, paper, scissors nature of the game and actually get some kills. Like I mentioned, you have to know your enemy and take advantage of their weaknesses. One of my favorite style groups to fight are the ones who kind of undock whatever, but seem to have poor group coordination. One ship will warp in individually, so you'll tackle it and start pinging it from range, and then another ship will come in, so you need to pull range, then a couple of frigates land and just rush you, so you're able to snag those kills pretty easy. A Hugin might warp in, so you warp off to a Celestial, and only a couple of their ships might follow, so you warp off again, and each time you do, their fleet gets more and more spread out. So eventually you might be able to load high damage ammo and go max damage on a cruiser landing on you, and hopefully either kill a high value target before you die, or snag something and still be able to warp off. Now if you tried this strategy on a different group with maybe better coordination, you might end up with a ramjag scramming you and their entire fleet landing on you before you're even able to kill it. Many ships are very effective at shutting solo people down, but if you play it cleverly, you can kill them too. Sometimes you just might be fighting a couple guys you might not know, and are in something like a Vagabond and an Interceptor. Let's say you're in a Blaster Brutix. It's much slower, much closer range, but hits like a truck at close range and has high EHP. Killing kiters with a brawler requires you to make a play, and for them to fall for it, unless they just mess up. Some examples are like crashing gates and hoping for a good spawn next to them, warping off to something and hoping they land close, or MJDing on them. Sometimes you might be able to slingshot a kiter into scram range too. Of course, the farther the speed difference is between the two ships, the harder it is to pull these plays off. Remember, you don't always have to take a fight either. Most of the time, if the enemy brings a Hugin, I just leave. There's very little I can do against them most of the time. However, if they did bring a Hugin, you just learn that that group might bring Hugins to fight you, so you can expect it next time. You don't always have to fight to learn something. At a certain point, groups might just bring too many people, and you can either try to pick one off or just leave and safe up. Go into a fight with the goal of trying to get kills and escaping, or just trying to kill something more expensive than yourself before you die. You can change your plays up depending on what you choose. In my last bootcamp video, we talked about how you use the information on the field to choose your flying style at any given time to help you survive and also get more kills. Like I've always said, solo is brutal and requires a lot of patience and a lot of losses. But try to learn something from each loss, learn something about your ship or a technique to kill those ships which might counter you, and learn something about your enemy so you can take advantage of their weaknesses next time. Take those hard fights and learn from them. Continuation of that quote from earlier, welcome death, but search for a good death. Thanks everyone, and fly dangerous.